What is happening, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back with a spoiler-free review for the new horror film Oddity from writer-director Damian Mc Carthy, which opened today. And I have to be careful with the praise that I'm about to shower on this movie because right now, just totally fresh coming out of the theater, it's my favorite film of 2024 without a close second. And I think it might be the scariest fucking movie that I've seen in the 21st century. It's definitely the scariest fucking movie I've seen in the last couple of years. It was so scary at one point that it almost stopped being fun. And I don't think I've ever had that experience before. Like, everybody's got a line that they don't want to cross when it comes to spooky movies, supernatural movies, etc. But there was one scene here where I was just recoiling into my seat. And it wasn't from anything grotesque. It wasn't from anything like, jumping out and giving me cheap, jump scares and that sort of thing. It was just through the magic of cinema and the ability of a filmmaker through very careful, deliberate filmmaking and just exquisite craftsmanship, building up a sense of suspense and mood and tension that took me to the breaking point. And the reason I'm kind of hesitant to go completely berserk, showering this movie with praise, is that I had no expectations going into it. All I knew about Oddity was that it was a spooky movie that won an award at the South by Southwest Film Festival. It premiered back on March 8th and won the Audience Award in the Midnighter section of the festival. It's like, all right, fine. I've seen a million horror movies. Like, what do you got? And for the first couple of minutes of the movie, I was really distracted because I was in the foulest mood imaginable. I'd exchanged a few words with somebody in the theater where their phone kept going off. And at one point, from my own point of view, I politely asked them to turn their phone off, and they told me to lighten up. And the moment somebody tells you to lighten up when you're already pissed, I was just stewing in the most black-hearted rage imaginable, where I was like, I will kill you in ways you can possibly dream of, blah, blah, blah. So I'm sitting there just fantasizing about ways to murder this guy, and suddenly I realized, wait a second, this movie is really stylish and really cool, and there's this astonishing performance by Carolyn Bracken, who plays two roles in this movie. And it took just basically 5 or 10 minutes, and I was totally under the movie's spell, and I realized I was in the hands of a really strong storyteller. And I never saw Caveat, Damian Mc Carthy's last movie from 2020, but I'm watching it tonight. I don't know if it's a good idea or a bad idea to watch his feature film debut tonight when I've had such a great movie-going experience, because I probably will have unrealistic expectations going into it. But I don't care. It's very rare that you discover a young filmmaker who's doing what will probably end up being the best work of their career right now. So I'm really fucking fired up for what the future might hold for both Damian Mc Carthy as well as star Carolyn Bracken. I mean, she has just the loveliest Irish accent. I could have just watched a movie with her, just reading the screenplay in an office, and it still would have been delightful just hearing her read the lines. But the fact that she gives this bone-chilling, eerie performance, a dual performance. How can I say this? Well, let's just say one of the characters, she plays twin sisters, but one of the characters, she's blind, but has some slight supernatural skills, which I find really interesting. She works in an oddities and curiosities shop. She's pretty good at reading items. If you bring her in a personal item like a wedding ring, she'll be able to tell you a few facts about the person who used to wear that ring, etc. and so forth. But where this movie turns into a murder mystery is the fact that her twin sisters, we see in the trailers, the trailer's all about this attack on her in her home, where she's told by a scary-looking guy outside, there's somebody in the house with you. And I'm already getting chills even remembering that. The fact that you have a spooky person outside who wants to come inside, and she doesn't want to let him in, but he's like, no, I'm here to help you. There's somebody inside with you. And I saw the trailer. It's like, oh, this looks pretty cool, pretty atmospheric. As it plays out in real time in the film, I mean, the hairs on your arms just go brrr, like a million little tiny erections. And it's just you won't be able to basically it'll be difficult to even believe just how effective the storytelling is on the part of Damian Mc Carthy, where he doesn't have a lot of resources at his fingertips. He has lighting, and he has music, and he's got a screenplay, he's got good angles, and he's got good actors, but basically he's got the kind of the fundamental tools for storytelling, but no major bells and whistles, and he just delivers champagne for the price of beer. And while I am tempted to proclaim this to be a true horror masterpiece, I think, the better way to describe it is it's a murder mystery. It's a murder mystery with a dash of the supernatural, where a woman who's blind but with a few paranormal abilities is trying to figure out what happened to her sister. And she's following the trail of breadcrumbs But what's cool about this movie and the way it unfolds is the director and the writer, Damian Mc Carthy, like he assumes the audience has the patience and the intelligence and the taste to keep up with the story with this slow drip of information, because there's no hand holding, but every prop, every tool, every character, every line of dialogue, they all feel like they had this natural, organic payoff that will come deeper in the movie. And if you've been paying attention, like, do not leave the theater. It's a short movie. I think it's 98 minutes. But do not leave the theater under any circumstances. Go to the bathroom beforehand, sit down like a big boy, and just watch it. But every little detail you see is going to have some sort of really cool, interesting conclusion that it'll build to. But it won't necessarily come in the order that you expect. And initially, I was like, whoa, like this movie's just got these big, giant, gaping holes. It does not. Trust in the filmmaker. He's going to stick the landing beautifully. I really only have one criticism of the movie. I feel like the very last shot of the movie just felt a little bit obvious, but I think at that point, whatever chemicals in your body that gets like secreted or released when you're terrified, I don't know if it's your adrenal gland or whatever it is, but whatever allows you to feel the chills when something scary happens, I think by that point, I just run out of whatever that juice is in the body that floods your system when you're feeling that kind of fight or flight instinct. And it's funny, I've been watching these kinds of movies for decades at this point. I thought I basically lost the ability to get this scared while watching a movie. I've seen movies from every era, from every country. I love horror films. I never get tired of them. But at a certain point, if you're a true horror junkie when you're young, you stop getting scared and you just like how cool and atmospheric and stylish they are. You just respond in different ways. But I've often described movies for me, it's like a little bit like filmmakers are a lot like drug dealers or smut peddlers. Like they're providing something that's kind of intoxicating and kind of dangerous and very, very enticing. But I don't know what that release is chemically in your body. Like people always talk about dopamine fixes for when you see like a tweet's gotten a lot of traffic, or, you know, there's different ways the brain kind of like rewards you with certain experiences that you have. I would love to know from like a true biologist or a doctor, like what is actually happening in your body when you do feel goosebumps or chills while watching a movie. And I don't know if it's a finite resource, but this movie will take that finite resource to the breaking point, because even there's only really one scene where I was just like, I'm not having fun anymore. But there were some other scenes where for like a minute or two, I would feel sustained dread and chills where I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. And there are a few jump scares. I hate jump scares, not because they scare me, but I feel like they're cheap and they're obvious. The jump scares in this movie are so well earned, and they deliver, like they hit you in the face with a fucking sledgehammer. And it's such simple filmmaking where the director, you can almost see him like a magician setting up the magic trick where he'll show you something, show you a different angle, show you something, show you a different angle, and you know the next time the camera goes back, something horrible is going to be there, and yet it still gets you all the same. It's like we're in on the magic trick, and yet we can still find total delight and perverse pleasure in the horrors as they unfold. But I realize I've been rambling like a fucking maniac for a couple minutes at this point. Let me slow down and offer some of the information from that can be found over on Wikipedia. But Oddity is a 2024 paranormal horror film written and directed by Damian Mc Carthy. The film centers on a blind medium and curio shopkeeper who is still grieving the death of her twin sister a year prior. A wooden mannequin from her cabinet of curiosities becomes crucial to her quest to uncover the truth about her sister's murder. It premiered at South by Southwest on March 8th, 2024, where it won the Audience Award in the Midnighter section of the festival. And I'm also seeing here that the film is shot in the same converted barn in West Cork, County Cork, Ireland, where McCarthy shot his first film, Caveat. And this post also gives a shout out to effects artist Paul McDonnell, who created the life-size wooden mannequin with input from McCarthy. McCarthy cites films like Child's Play and Creepshow as influences. I'm a big fan of those old doll comes to life films, he said in 2024, but they're always small, and I thought it'd be cool to have one that's your size that would be a force to reckon with if it did come alive. And I won't say whether or not the doll comes to life, but the doll's definitely spooky, and it's got these horrific expressions, sometimes that are captured in illustrations, sometimes on the doll itself. But the doll is used beautifully in this movie. But really, it boils down to the performances. The cast in this movie is so fucking good. It's not a large cast, so I'm almost terrified to even talk about the cast because I don't want to give away the game, because there is like an Agatha Christie style whodunit story at play running throughout it. And I think I figured it out or I felt like I'd figured it out, maybe about 5 minutes before the movie like fully shows its hand and like says, this is the plot, this is who did what, and this is where they were and why, and blah blah blah. So maybe that's maybe other people will figure it out much more quickly, because once again the cast is pretty limited. Or maybe some people will be perfectly like, ready for the moment where the movie kind of shows its hand. But I was very, very just on the hook with the murder mystery. But really, the feature attraction here is the fact that this movie just will fill you with so much dread and so much terror over and over again, which almost never happens in the horror genre. Like, I'm used to gore, I'm used to nudity, I'm used to shock value, I'm used to jump scares, I'm used to movies that are really, really fun, but very rarely do I see a movie that kind of takes me back to that place when you're 5 years old, where horror movies like feel real and like they really fuck you up. And it's interesting how 2024, in spite of being kind of a down year for movies in terms of overall box office, we've had a lot of options in the horror genre so far this year. Like, we had Late Night with the Devil, and we had Immaculate and things like that. But then this summer, things really started getting cranked up a bit. We had In a Violent Nature, which had great scenes, but ultimately had a frustrating ending. Maxine, which some people liked, but it is underperforming. But at least it's like, the climax to a trilogy. Maybe there'll be more, but I felt like that movie was a little disappointing, but some people like it. And we have Long Legs, which is setting records for indie distributor Neon. It's so rare that we actually hear like good, positive news about the independent film scene where a low-budget movie is making money. Usually it's like, oh, specialty theaters are dying, indie theaters are dying, they're all going to streaming, what are we going to do? But Long Legs shows how, if with a clever marketing campaign and a pretty good movie, you can still crank out some serious box office. But I think Oddity blows all these fucking movies out of the water. Like I said, it's my favorite movie of the year. Like, some people say, what about Dune Part 2? I like it more than Dune Part 2. I'm going to buy the Blu-ray. This is the first movie I've seen all year where I truly want to like almost like dissecting like shot by shot like a Hitchcock movie. I want to try to figure out, how did the director deliver such impactful scenes? He has the exact same tools at his fingertips that every other filmmaker has. And so it's like, what is the secret sauce that he used to deliver such devastating scares for somebody who I'm numb to scares. I've got a lot of emotional scar tissue from a lot of fucked up movies throughout my life, and yet he just got right underneath my skin. But there's some more horror movies coming our way. We still in August have Cuckoo and Alien Romulus. I hope Cuckoo will be good. And then this fall, we have Substance, which looks really cool. We have Smile 2. We have Never Let Go. I saw the trailer for Never Let Go during the trailers for Oddity, and it looked really cool. We have Terrifier 3. I love the Terrifier movies. I'm really fired up for Terrifier 3. And then, of course, the Christmas present for every horror fan is that Robert Eggers is giving us Nosferatu. Like, by the time we reach December, 2024 might be regarded as one of the best years for the horror genre in many, many years. And I'm all for it, because I'm sick to death of so many of the other options that mainstream Hollywood tends to give us on an annual basis. Like, all the reboots and reimaginings and sequels and prequels and blah, 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 where the same superheroes keep showing up, or the same giant monsters keep showing up, or the same giant robots, same aliens, blah, 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 same dinosaurs. Oddity is brand spanking new. I've never seen a movie like it. I love mysteries, I love horror, but this movie stirred them together in devastating fashion. And I'm realizing that I've totally failed to do that which I set out to do, where I said I wasn't going to oversell it or overpraise it, because I would like it if people would go see the movie knowing nothing and then find this review afterwards just for like the breakdown and discussion. But obviously I'm hoping to spread the word as well, and it's hard to spread the word about a movie that you like without resorting to hyperbole. So, I don't know, maybe if you listen to this video and you haven't seen the movie yet, like, forget everything I said and try to go in totally fresh. But if the trailer intrigues you at all, and it's funny, the trailer, like, I liked the trailer, but I wasn't blown away by the trailer the way I was for some other movies that ultimately ended up disappointing. And I think it's just because Oddity is so subtle, and it's hard to capture that subtle mood and that subtle tension in a 2-minute trailer. It's a huge challenge, unless the director has a really unusual, interesting idea for the trailer. And it captures a little bit of it, but basically it's like taking like 5-10 minute long sustained feelings of dread and trying to compress them into like 10 or 15 second clips. So it kind of spoils the magic a little bit. But don't be surprised if Carolyn Bracken starts appearing in a lot of movies moving forward. The fact that she plays two roles that are so different, obviously twin sisters, but one's all heart, pure emotion, you feel nothing but like, just complete and total sympathy for her, and the other is this kind of crafty, scheming, but very fragile woman. She's blind. She's not helpless. She can get around more or less on her own, and she runs a business on her own, but she definitely has certain shortcomings when it comes to trying to outsmart and catch a killer and that sort of thing. It reminds me a little bit of Audrey Hepburn's character in Wait Until Dark. And Wait Until Dark, when it came out, famously had one of the best jump scares in movie history, where the movie is this marvelous movie, and then it just happens to have this scare at the end where people like were leaping out of their seats, throwing popcorn to the ceiling, etc. and so forth. It was fantastic. But don't be surprised if you hear people making comparisons between Carolyn Bracken and Audrey Hepburn in that. But people will probably also draw comparisons with Mia Farrow and Rosemary's Baby, or Ellen Burstyn and The Exorcist. And I realize I'm bringing up actresses where they're considered part of like, you know, horror royalty. Like these are performances that are like in the Hall of Fame in the history of the genre. Go back to friggin' Fay Wray doing things like King Kong back in the 1930s. There are certain actresses where it's like, God damn, they did a lot of really, really good horror movies. I don't know if Carolyn Bracken will ever feel compelled to come back to the genre, but she's given us all she needs to give to be in the Horror Hall of Fame for all time. But now I'm faced with the dreadful task of trying to remember the last time a horror movie got to me this intensely. And while it's a totally different kind of movie, maybe the French extremity movie Martyrs, which I think came out in 2008. You definitely want to watch it in French, but hang on. Martyrs, 2008. I have the DVD for it. Yeah, 2008. That's a pretty fucked up, disturbing movie, but that's much more graphic and in your face and disturbing, just from like all the violence and torture and people being skinned and that sort of thing. Once again, it's a French extremity movie. If you don't know what French extremity is, basically from the late 90s to about like the late aughts, there was something in the water in France where people started making these intensely disturbing kind of, they were either art house dramas like Irreversible or full-blown horror films like Martyrs, but there are a bunch of good ones. But it's probably been since then that I've seen a horror movie that's this impactful, this disturbing, and one that I'm like eager to revisit. Like I am chomping at the bit to revisit Oddity, and like I said, like study it under a magnifying glass and just try to figure out like how did it get to me with such simple tricks that are just so effective. It just made me feel like a young film freak all over again. So for that, I am truly grateful, but I am truly apologetic that I've probably oversold the shit out of this movie. Like I said, forget everything I said, go into it raw, form your own conclusions, but don't be surprised if people start talking about the new Irish extremity when it comes to the films of Damian Mc Carthy. And I can't wait to watch Caveat. And for people out there who've known about Damian Mc Carthy since 2020 due to the film Caveat, I'm sure now you're thinking like, all right, like our boy's all grown up now and he's going to start gaining new fans, so on and so forth. But I'm just excited that Ireland, which is a relatively small country of like 5 million people, that it still has this like thriving film culture. I mean, I was a big fan of like The Banshees of Inisherin, which came out I think 2 years ago, and I went to Ireland in the spring of 2022 to work with Robert Amara and Simon O'Neill and Bill Scurry on 2 documentaries about movies shot in Ireland, and I'll include links to those in the description below. But I'm very proud of my involvement in those little docs. But anyway, I'm officially rambling at this point, but I've seen my my number one movie for 2024, and if I don't see any other movie that matches it the rest of the year, I'll still consider 2024 a success. But fingers crossed, double crossed, hoping still for Nosferatu to seriously deliver this Christmas. In any case, if you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a response or a reaction or a comment down below, as well as liking the video, subscribing to the channel, hitting that notification bell, and hit all. Just make sure you're notified about future videos. Coming up, I've got more box office and more House of the Dragon, and next week I'm going to be doing a 50th anniversary review for Death Wish, which I'm starting to work on now, which I'm very excited about. But plenty of videos coming on this channel in the not-so-distant future. So thanks so much for sticking with me all this time. But more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.